and crop it out better?
Nothing. Ignore it.
Welcome to Log Cabin Schoolhouse. This is Jennifer Wolverton and Mercy Wolverton. We're going to talk today about coding and some of the things that we've done in our homeschool. And we've done a lot of different things. We haven't always been super successful. So we got to a certain point around 7th grade with Mercy where we felt like we were not keeping up with what the schools were doing. And we just started doing different things. And by I don't know, maybe 10th grade, we found that we were really, truly excelling to the point where going back to school was impossible for Mercy. So now she's going into 12th grade and she's done some really, really, truly excellent things. And we are at a point where we need to come back out here and share with people what kind of tools we've used and make sure everybody knows what's out there and available to you as well. So the path to technology, coding, 3D printing, cyber, we talk about all these things in this presentation, and we hope that they benefit you guys in some way. Feel free to send us questions. I'm going to try and watch for questions. We're trying to stream on YouTube right now, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a great success. It's our first attempt at it. But I will watch out there, and if you can post questions, please do, and we'll try and answer any questions that way. If you're out there, and if not, feel free to post questions in the future out there, and we will watch for them on this video stream. And here is Mercy. She's going to talk to you guys. We're going to aim for 30 minutes, and that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit about us. We're the Wolvertons. We've kind of been through all of this with homeschooling together just because it's been such a family experience finding what you need for your education and then applying it to the rest of the family and how everybody can help each other in that aspect. So my mom is Jennifer. She was just talking. She's kind of like the head of our schooling. Ryan is my dad. He is actually working in the tech fields right now with Microsoft. So he can help us with any questions on that part as well. Samantha is my oldest sister. She is graduated and is working in programming right now with Capital One. So we're a very techie family. Whether or not we intend to be in that way, we always end up there. Crystal is on the right. She is in college right now. She's into engineering field, so not quite as techie, but we're all kind of in that engineering technology fields. I'm Mercy. I'm, like my mom said, going into 12th grade, and I am totally into the technology aspect of it, 3D printing, cyber, and I'm looking to go into cybersecurity as my major when I do go off to college. Logan is my younger brother. He is in 7th grade. I should probably know that, but he's in 7th grade. He's been coming up through all of the coding stuff right about now. So he's done all of the things I've tried to learn coding and teach coding and give back. He's been my guinea pig through all of that. So he's getting everything, whether or not it's the best quality or just anything that we're trying to put out there. But he's been a real help in that too. So for me, I have, in the past few years, really found that I love the technology and everything that has to do with. And in doing that, I have received a NCWIT, National Center for Women in Technology. There's a lot of acronyms when you get to tech. The Alabama Affiliate Award for working with, I tutoring students, and I've done like free game nights and everything to introduce coding. I've done cryptology game nights, cybersecurity game nights, things like that, just to introduce people to those fields. I've also been the recipient of a WESIS conference scholarship, so Women in Cybersecurity, which was amazing. I got to go to an actual conference in Ohio, and I was able to listen to other women in this field that's heavily dominated by men and talk about how they got there and what we need to do to keep bringing more women into that field. I was homeschooled pretty much my whole academic career from 4th grade to now, with the exclusion of 10th grade. For 10th grade, I went to Alabama's School of Cyber Technology and Engineering, which was great. It was a great experience. It was a boarding school, actually, for everybody, for the whole Alabama state. And it did have a lot of new introductions. Like, I didn't know about hackathons. I didn't know about all these other competition aspects of technology. But on the other hand, I had already done so much with coding and technology and all of my other classes that it just didn't make sense for me to stay there. I would have had to retake too many classes. So it kind of gets hard once you've already done these things through homeschool, because it is such a specialized to you pathline. But since I was homeschooled, I was able to be a teacher and a tutor. I started in 9th grade, I think, teaching coding. That was the year after I learned coding myself. We had people over to our house. We had a group of about 10 kids where I was teaching coding. I think we did some through Roblox. We did some through what I'm going to talk about later, which is Code Combat. And it's just kind of grown from there. For competitions and stuff, I've done hackathons, where I have a group of my friends who I've met through ASCTE, and we go to these for they're like 24 hours or some are even like 48 hours long competitions, and they give you a problem. Like I think we had one that was like mental health, like how would you try to help mental health, mental awareness, everything like that in nowadays coming back from the pandemic and everything. So they had all the teams who you can do anything, that you have unlimited resources on the computer. So we set up a website. We did coding behind it. And so we had like JavaScript, we had HTML, CSS, Python, all of these different languages. So we all paired up to do that. And by the end of the hackathon, we were able to present to the judges, and we were actually the winner of that hackathon. So that was really amazing. So I definitely want to be able to share that hackathons are great, and you don't have to know everything going into a hackathon. You can actually know very, very little, if anything, and it's a very good learning experience. So let's get started with coding. So coding curriculum, there's a lot and not that much out there. So after really like deep searching the web, I found these as the top coding curriculum that you'll hear about. So Code Combat is my favorite, and Code Combat is the overarching company, and within Code Combat, they also have Ozaria. So Code Combat is a gamified learning environment where you can type in Python. They also have JavaScript, and they just added C++. I've only gone through it in Python because that's my specialization, but they also have it available in the other languages. Code Combat is gamified with levels that you try and defeat the ogres or move your avatar to the certain part of the screen to complete the quest or something. Ozaria is a little bit different than that, as it's not as practice levels as Code Combat. It is a story-based game, actually. It has 4 chapters, and through the chapters, it actually introduces and teaches a lot of the introductory skills that you'll need going into coding. So like it'll go over conditionals, if statements, and that it'll go over functions at the end, which is one of the larger, more complex aspects of coding. And all of these things that you're learning through the games, you can apply elsewhere. And that's the big thing about using text-based code, which Code Combat and Ozaria uses. There's also CodeHS and Runestone Academy. Both of those are great resources. They're all free. CodeHS and Runestone Academy are both free. You'll have to create a teacher account, but that's like everything with homeschool community. CodeHS is a lot more, it has a lot more videos, interaction. It looks a lot more fun than Runestone Academy. Runestone Academy is a bunch of online interactive textbooks, but it's going to be harder for younger children to be as interactive with Runestone Academy as they are with CodeHS. So just make sure that you find which platform is best for you, because even though it might be one of the top ones that I have on this list, it may not work for you or your child. You'll also hear a lot about code.org, which is a great community platform and everything. I don't really use code.org for a lot, simply because they do a lot of block-based code. And the way I try to work through coding, and what I'd suggest others to work through coding, is to start with text-based. Because if you start with block-based, then you're kind of getting yourself a crutch, and then it's hard to transfer from block-based and the logic you've learned from that into text-based. And with Code Combat or Azaria, they have different things that you can do, like you can have drop downs and autofilling and everything like that. So you don't have to be able to type a million words a second or know how to spell everything, and it'll still have you starting with text-based code. Similar point of view for Scratch. It's definitely highly known. It's a great program, but again, it is block-based. So I tend to stay away from it, but it's still a great program if you wanted to look into that. Okay, so free coding. So these are some resources that I found throughout the years that are out there for free. A lot of them are games. So I have Coding Bat is right here. And this is like project levels. So it kind of takes you from, if you learned it in a different platform like Code Combat, then you're kind of taking it out of that and you're just looking at pure Python in the idle environment. And it has a question, it's like how many monkeys are jumping on the bed, or some silly question like that. And you write something to solve the question by either returning a number or some other thing. And it has a bunch of practice problems, and it also has Java as well as Python, so that you can practice depending on what language you're learning. Terminal 2 is the top right corner, and it is a online company that has a bunch of games, and I think they're all in Java, or it might be JavaScript, one of the two. And they're really fun games. Like, it looks like you would see in games nowadays. You walk around, in this particular game, you walk around, you're trying to fix the hacks that are going on, and you need to code to do that, and it kind of walks you through it while you're playing the game so that you're learning while you're going. And they have different levels. They have beginner, intermediate, advanced, so you can play a bunch of different games that match your skill level. Khan Academy has a whole bunch. They're building even more as the years go on. They have more than just AP computer science. They used to just have that, but now they have intro to coding, other resources out there. They have videos for Python, I believe. So that's a really great resource. TED-Ed, Think Like a Coder, is a series of videos on YouTube. So it's completely free, available to use and find. And it kind of walks you through the logic of code while you're following this story adventure. Geeks for Geeks is a great resource to use even after you know a bunch about coding, because you can't know everything possible about coding because there's so many different libraries or code that other people have done or anything like that. So you don't know, it's really hard to know everything. So if you want to know that your code does a certain thing, then you can just search on Geeks for Geeks for how to do said certain thing. Also, it's really helpful because Geeks for Geeks has like practically every computer language out there. They even have some stuff about competitions, coding competitions and stuff like that. So they have a bunch of really cool resources out there. And the last one I have on here is Make Code Arcade, which is from Microsoft, I think, made that one. And it is block-based, so I don't highly suggest it, but if you can't type yet or your child is too young to do that, then Make Code Arcade is a good way to start. And it starts you as like game development, so they're like building these games, and it's pretty cool. Let's see, next slide. Okay, so there's a lot of other resources beyond the free online ones. There's a bunch of books about either people who have been instrumental in coding and the history behind it. There's a lot that has to do with codes, as in ciphers and things that came along in world wars and other wars, so that you you know and your allies know what you're saying, but the enemy can't intercept and know what you're about to do. So that's a big part of cybersecurity, cryptography, a bunch of that aspect. And there's a lot of people and history around that. So you can definitely find books about that. Then there's games. So these are like hard copy games. You have them on your table, you play around with them, and they teach you the logic around code, which is still really important. So again, if you don't think your child is ready to actually be typing on a computer, or you want to do some unplugged activities as well as some computer activities, then these are some great games to kind of build that critical thinking skills. We have like Codemasters. I think this one's just called Code, and then Robot Turtles. So they're all giving you like, you're building an algorithm and you have to move the character certain ways, and it does that exactly. And you have to think through all those different steps before you go. And then there are the books on the left. So those are all different types of kind of like project books. They walk you through specific things in Python. And since there are so many different aspects of Python, there's a lot of different books out there. So they have Invent Your Own Computer Games with Python. And in that book, they have a bunch of different examples of introductory computer games, and they completely walk you through it. There's Learn to Code by Solving Problems. So they just take a different perspective on Python. So you might start with the same introduction and the same basics, but then you're building on and thinking about it in different ways. So you'll get to different end goals through the steps based on what you want to learn. So like Make Python Talk will teach you about how to use audio and voice recognition and stuff like that into your code. Learn to Program with Minecraft will apply it to Minecraft. They also have like workbooks like HTML and CSS. So that's another unplugged version of, instead of doing it on the computer all the time, you can have a workbook where you're handwriting it all. Let's keep moving. So that was coding. So what about 3D printing? So 3D printing is definitely a growing field. I have really loved messing around with it. We have, I think, 4 computers, printers now. We have 2 Ender 3s, a CR10, and a Pro Mega. So our recommendations would be to get either a Ender 3 or a CR10 if you are starting, because they're relatively cheap now, because they used to be a couple hundred, some even in the thousands 5-10 years ago. Now you can get an Ender 3 for under $200, and it will last and be I can't think of the word, reliable. It'll be reliable while you're printing, a lot more than other printers, because as soon as you try to have the printer that does more, then it's going to be a lot more work on your end. The Ender 3 is a really good introductory kit, so that you can have the decent build volume, like you can do a bunch of different filaments with it while still not having to know all about how a 3D printer works to actually get it to work. So the CR10 is kind of like a step up from that. It's a little bit more work on your end. It's a little bit more hands-on, but it also has a larger build volume, and you can have it print different materials. So you can have it just be a little bit more complex. You can reach more projects and stuff like that. But both of these options are what's called FDM printing, fused deposition modeling. So pretty much what that's just saying is it's taking a filament, whatever it be. I tend to use PLA, which is just plastic, and it's melting it through a hot end, and then it is moving the nozzle and pretty much drawing a 3D shape. So it draws the first layer, and then it moves up, draws the second layer, moves up, draws the third layer. And then you can get something like, I have Stitch over here that came off the build plate. I have some ghosts. I have a shield. And this is a good example because even though the build volume is not the greatest, I printed that shield completely on the Ender 3. And then I had about 4, 8, 12, 16 pieces, and I welded them together, which is a really fancy way of saying I took a soldering iron, I took the piece, and I melted them until they rejoined together. And then I like sanding it down, and then I painted it and primed it until it actually became the shield that I wanted it to look like. But even if you have a small print volume, you can build whole things like the shield. The helmet from the Mando suit was all printed on the Ender 3. It had about 7 or 8 pieces to it, and then you just melt them together. So there isn't very many limitations. It's just more work after you've printed it. Okay. Okay, the slide's getting stuck. Okay, so for computer science, the traditional path you'll find in most high schools nowadays is that by 11th grade, you'll have the opportunity, if you wanted to take computer science principles AP test and course. And that's if you have a school that's really on par with meeting those requirements and providing that as an opportunity. And then by 12th grade, you'll be able to take AP Computer Science A, which is going into Java programming. Computer Science Principles is actually no specific computer language. So you can just learn computer programming in whatever language and then take the test. And then Computer Science A is specifically learning in depth about Java. But that's not very much that it covers. So I created my own computer science path, and this is just possible because it is very refined to who you are and what you want to do and what the student wants to do with coding. So if you were to start as early as possible, I would not start earlier than 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, you probably wouldn't be doing too much of actual coding, but I would highly suggest start typing. So there's free, I think, typing tutor, typing test online that you can do typing challenges, typing games, typing all these things to really just get the familiarity with the keyboard and just bring the word count up a little bit so that they're not touch typing with one finger. Because one thing that you really don't want to happen is for the student to be frustrated with their own skill set and then associate that frustration with coding. So if they aren't ready for the typing side of coding, don't push them into it because that might ruin their love for it if they could have loved it, but now they don't like it because it's too hard on something that you can just wait on, build up that typing skills a little bit more, and then try again. But if you did want to just get started a little bit beyond typing, then I would suggest starting with Ozaria Chapter 1, which is a very beginner, intermediate, beginner before you get to the intermediate levels and everything, because just Chapter 1. And the cool thing about Chapter 1 is it is free. You do have to have a teacher account set up and shared so that your student can get to Ozaria. So that's why I have Ozaria stuff set up. You can't get to that through an individual license, but you can definitely reach out to me and I will send you the link to Ozaria. And then there's logical games like the board games I suggested. There's other things like that that you can get them into the mindset of coding before they're actually coding. 4th grade is pretty much the same thing. It's really heavily on typing, but then they can keep going through Ozaria. And this is like best case scenario. So obviously this will be different based on each student and their learning level, what they're doing outside of coding, what they're doing, time-wise, all these things. 5th grade, they would still be working on typing. And really, I did stop putting typing in, but typing should be all the way through until you're at like 50 words per minute. I don't think I hit 50 words per minute until like 10th grade. So maybe I was just slow on it, but you really just need to be practicing a lot to get that word speed up. But once they've finished Ozaria, then they can get going on Code Combat's computer science pathway. And then once they've completed Ozaria and Code Combat's computer science pathway, they will have a solid understanding of Python, all of the basics of Python and how to use it and apply it and all that. So now, once they've finished that, I've labeled it as 6th grade. They can look into other aspects of it. So Code Combat offers some game development levels. They also have some web development levels. So maybe if your child is interested in creating games when they get older or just as a hobby, then you can have them start the game development levels. or if they want to build a website, they can learn web development through Code Combat. And I would still keep them in Code Combat until they are a little bit more comfortable with the concepts. But then after that, you've actually surpassed Code Combat and all that it offers. So then after that, I would actually suggest start learning computer science principles for the AP. Now, this is 7th grade that I put it, and I can definitely say that 7th graders could pass the CSP test. I have passed the AP CSP test with a 5 out of 5. I passed it in 10th grade, but I definitely think it's possible for middle schoolers to be able to pass it, just if you're given the option to take it and learn it. I'm teaching computer science principles to a group of middle schoolers in 7th and 8th grade this year, and I have no doubt that they will be ready to take the test. Whether or not they actually do or want to is something else entirely, but the fact that they could, if they chose to, is the whole point there. And then I would say I put Cyber Patriots in here. So I mentioned cyber competitions, hackathons and such. Cyber Patriots is another club competition that's out there, and it's more on the cybersecurity side. So it's saying that you have a computer that is like a work business has this one computer, and you have to find all of the vulnerabilities in it. So like if you have a list of users, make sure that the right users are administrators, make sure there's no media files or unwanted files that could lead to viruses or any unwanted software, hacking tools and such on the computer. Make sure that there's a firewall and all of these other security features that you'd want to have on your computer so that they don't end up harming the computer, the business in any way. So then you can actually start that in 7th grade, and then you can compete in Cyber Patriots all the way through 12th grade. And I think they even have a version in college, but I'm not sure. But they definitely have a lot that you can do in 6 years if you were to start in 7th grade. In 8th grade, if you have finished CSP, whether or not you've taken the AP, I would highly suggest you take the AP, if not the first year, but take the AP for CSP the 2nd year. You can definitely take 2 years to do it. You can take 6 years to do it. It's all up to you and what you want. But after you finished CSP, I would suggest looking at CSA, the AP, so that you can really get into Java. Still keep up with Cyber Patriots. If they're interested in the cybersecurity aspect of it. Sometimes they're more interested in game development and building up coding and programming rather than cybersecurity, and that's totally fine, but make sure that they at least try it. 9th grade, so after they've done computer science principles and through Code Combat, they would have learned Python, and then with APCSA, they would have learned Java. Now, after that, I would say to make the trio of computer languages is to know Python, Java, and one of the Cs. So there's like 3 different C programming languages. They're all slightly different versions of themselves. There's C#, C, and C++. You can dual enroll and take that at a college. Now that you're in 9th grade, I think you should be able to take college classes. I'm not quite sure. It might depend on the community college or college that's near you and what you have set up. But if not, there are definitely stuff out there like Geeks for Geeks. There's probably stuff out there on other courses that you can find. There's Runestone Academy has some textbooks. Some of them are even learning C for a Python programmer, so you don't have to start from the very basics again, because it's the same logic, just different syntax, different ways that they're going about doing the ideas. And then in 10th grade, keep up with Cyber Patriots, but now you've had the 3 core programming languages, and so now you really just get to pick your specialization. What are you or your child interested in? And then just follow that. So there's cybersecurity, there's certifications that they can get, there's game development, robotics, app development, web development, all of these things out there. There's applying Arduino with robotics to 3D printing and building a moving machine or project that way. If you wanted to do more on like the hard physical engineering aspect of it, They have, there's like Iron Man suits, there's Mandalorian suits, there's helmets that you can do and then have Arduino that opens the helmet or flashes lights or something like that to apply multiple aspects of their interest. And then I would just do that same thing, reevaluate at the end of each year for 10th, 11th, and 12th, and just follow their interest until they get to college. And then they might be able to continue this as a hobby. They might be able to go into it as an actual career field, but now they have the opportunity to do that. Okay, so how do they go about doing that for now? So what we offer is we have teen tutors. Myself and Kira are, we meet virtually via Teams. It's low cost. We are both actively immersed in tech. Kira is actually currently at ASCTE, so she's definitely immersed in the cyber technology and engineering aspect of all that. I am still working on a bunch of classes with cybersecurity and coding and everything. I'm always furthering my knowledge. So we're both actively working in technology right now. And we offer tutoring one-on-one for kids to walk them through Code Combat in Ozaria so that we can really start them and then get them rolling and have so that they can ask questions and we can explain it easier and stuff like that. The downside to that is Team Tutors requires you to have a time that matches with the tutor. If that isn't an option for you, also we're pretty booked up for this school year, so that may not be an option. If we are already booked, then obviously we wouldn't have a time that would work. But we also offer a self-paced course on Log Cabin Schoolhouse's website, and you can complete it on your own time. It's low cost still. For coding, you can end up paying a lot of money to learn coding. It's a very sought after skill. But with our self-paced course, it goes through all of the computer science stuff from CS1 in Code Combat all the way to CS4. So it covers a lot of skills, and most students won't complete this in 1 year. So you'll pay only once for the full course, but you can keep using it until you've completed it. There's a bunch of interactive, I'd like to say they're fun. I made them. It's me in the videos. Fun instructional videos that walk them through introducing a concept and terms and terminology and how to talk about tech. And then it tells you which Code Combat levels go with this topic. So complete these levels and then watch the next video. And then you watch the next video, complete these levels, and it's so on and so forth. Also, it has some short little quizzes in every few sections that they can take as many times as they want. It's really just so that they know that they understand the concepts and they're ready to move forward. If they are stuck on something, they can always email me. I put my other email in the actual videos, but there's also my Log Cabin Schoolhouse email right here. And just by buying a Code Combat license or an Ozaria license through me, you have access to myself for any questions, whether it's tech or coding or, hey, this isn't working, or what does this mean, or something like that. You always have access to me until your license expires. Okay, so now here's some fun little terms that we have for programming, electronics. So we've talked about all of these different things. We've had cybersecurity, we've had robotics, we've had programming, 3D printing, all of these things. And they're not meant to be done by themselves, ultimately. Because you can do programming by itself, but if you do programming in electronics, then now you're a tinkerer. If you do design and engineering and programming, then you're an engineer. If you do electronics and engineering, then you're a maker. Or if you do all three of them, you can be called a Roboteer. I think that's a pretty cool term. So maybe if you don't even want to do this as an end goal, maybe try doing 1 or 2 projects that kind of combines all of these aspects, just so that you can call yourself a Roboteer, because that's pretty cool. Okay, so Cyberseek is a cool interactive website for cybersecurity jobs. It tells you based on location, how many jobs are needed in that area. And cybersecurity is a very needed field right now. We have a lot of need for it and very little people who actually know how to do it. So you'll actually find that they're accepting people who don't know cybersecurity at all and then teaching them on the job, which is great. But it means that if you already know cybersecurity, you have either certification or you have previous experience or you have a degree, then they're going to be paying you more and you're going to have first choice at these jobs as opposed to people who don't know how to do all of these things with cybersecurity. And then you can specifically look at different jobs within cybersecurity because cybersecurity is such a broad field. You don't have to be a computer person to really be into cybersecurity. There's a lot of different aspects of it. Okay, so I talked about this a little bit earlier with block-based versus text-based, but you can really see on the top, that is what Code Combat looks like. And it has the little drop downs for when you're typing to be able to choose what command you want to be writing. On the very left corner, you can see that's Scratch. It has block-based, so you just drag and drop a block. You'll choose from little drop downs to be a bit more specific. But if you had to choose between those two learning platforms to get to this is a program completely in Python. I built it. It's just a fun little game about a spy cow. I don't know. I was having fun one day. But if you were trying to go from scratch and you know programming, you know the logic of it in Scratch, and then you wanted to build a program in Python, pure Python, it would be a lot harder to move from there to here in the text of Python idle versus going from Code Combat to Python. It's a lot smaller of a jump. So that's why I really suggest to do text-based, because even if in Code Combat they're doing a lot of behind the scenes work for you that you won't have in the Python idle, you really are a lot closer to understanding the syntax and the setup of coding that you'll need in regular old games. So that's all I have for today. So I hope to see you either in a future class, future game night, or for tutoring.